everyone, and welcome to our next session, Enhancing CAP Apps with Central Authorization Policies. We're pleased to welcome Andre, a developer in the CAP CDS compiler team. And we also have Matthias, a security expert for CAP, who you might already recognize from his talk earlier. Let's give them a nice warm welcome.
Yeah, welcome to this session about how to enhance CAP applications with AMS policy. So AMS stands for Authorization Management Service. It's a kernel platform service in BTP for which recently a CAP integration has been introduced. Before we dive into the session, I first give you just a short overview. So I will give you a motivation why AMS is in place. And then we will have a short demo how to enhance CAP application with AMS support, which turns out to be pretty simple. And then we do a two-step approach. We will first add to our application role-based access control, which is a pretty basic authorization strategy. And then as a bit more advanced step, we are going to add attribute-based access control by means of AMS filter attributes. Yeah, why AMS? So we all are used to XSUA. Why is AMS now in place? So I guess it actually starts with IAS, which is the identity authentication service on BTP as an evolution step of XSUA. And why is that? It's mainly to provide you with best possible integration capabilities in the cloud. So that's within BTP, but it's also towards non-BTP endpoints. So for example, connecting your BTP application with LOB endpoints like a SuccessFactors or an S4 system, but also non-SAP endpoints. Building on open standards is the base ground for that. But it also has some consequences. So it builds an OpenID Connect. And due to that, the tokens that are issued by IAS, so as given by the OAuth2 protocol, will not contain any authorization informations anymore. As it used to be with XSUA, you will not find any scopes, not find any attribute values, whatever. It's just an ID token which can be even forwarded in the systems. So that's about standards and integration. And now, of course, as IAS is only focusing on authentication part, AMS needs to close the gap about authorization. Yeah, it's about to define policies containing roles, recombine them, and also allow customers to assign to users and bringing some really flexible service for customization, also for integration for automated user provisioning. Okay, let's first start with our first step, role-based access control. Well, so that's actually about slicing your domain functionality. So if you think about your domain which has a number of resources, most notably your entities on the one side, and on the other side, the events, the operations that are allowed to execute on your entities. And as an atomic access rule, you can have a CDS grant, so combining events with an entity. So for example, in the S-Flight application, which we'll show later, it would be a simple CRUD event allowed on the travel entity only. Of course, that is not sufficient to fulfill higher level flows in your technical application endpoints. For example, for planning a travel, you would require some more grants, maybe adding also booking entities or doing additional stuff on different resources, different entities. And for that, you usually combine several grants, these atomic grants, to higher level roles to define kind of basic building blocks of access rules to fulfill certain technical flows in your service. And you do that on CDS level. Yeah, by means of restrict annotation, you define the grants, these building blocks, assigning to CAP or CDS roles, combining several grants to fulfill certain flows. And you do that as a developer at the same time. in the domain. You have full domain knowledge. It's quite technical. Actually, this is not AMS specific at all. You might have it already in place. So with XSUA, there's no difference at all. You can go with that right away. What is new with AMS, that on top, AMS brings a way to combine now, rather on a business level, from a business perspective, several CDS roles into base policies. Usually done by a role model also at design time, and usually reflecting rather how users interact with your overall application. Usually that is reflecting job titles. Yeah? For example, a travel planner would use a policy containing several roles that allow several flows in your application. Andre, how does that look like in practice?
Okay, thank you, Matthias. So let's have a look. First of all, we are starting with the basic S-Flight application. S-Flight is a publicly open source application that SAP provides, and this version of S-Flight is implemented using CAP. I will just give you the basics of the application. So you have a standard list, and you have a list of travels. That is travel requests, for example. And currently, I'm logged in as the user Uma. Uma is an unauthorized user. So if we have, for example, this entry, which is open and needs to be rejected or approved, and we try to do that, we can see that we're not authorized and hence get an error message. That's the basic. So you can see we can accept travel, reject travel. That's the role of the reviewer. We can also deduct a discount or create new travels, for example. That's the role of a planner. Let's have a look at the source code for that. This is a really standard CAP application. We have our application YAML, which in this case we have a CAP Java application, where we can see that we have a few mock users. We have Uma, who has no roles. We have Paula, who has the role of planner, and so on. The CDS side is also quite straightforward. We have a travel entity exposed in an authenticated service. We have a few bound actions. As you've seen on the UI part, you can see we have create travel by template and so on. And the authorization part of that is also quite straightforward in CDS. We have the well-known @restrict annotation, with which we can grant certain events, or in this case, a write permission or deduct discount permission to a specific role, such as in planner, as planner. And yeah, that's the basic setup we have here. And now we want to switch to AMS. We want to add AMS to our application. And to do so, we only have to call CDS @AMS. In this case, I'm also calling CDS build for AMS, which is normally done by the Maven part. But just for demonstration purposes, I'm already doing that here on the command line. And if everything works, we can see it's adding IRS, it's adding AMS. We run small setup, and we can see a few files were generated. We can see that some policies were generated. So let's have a look at those. So we have the AMS folder. We have a CAP folder, which contains base policies. Base policies, in this case, are the policies that are auto-generated for you. You don't have to do anything here. It's generated by the AMS CAP plugin. It goes through your model and has to look at which roles are assigned, and for each role, a policy is developed or added in this case. Normally, you wouldn't do that. You would write your own policies. For example, let's write a travel planner, which has the role planner. Let's add a travel reviewer, who has the role of a reviewer. We don't change the CDS part. That remains the same. We still have the @restrict annotation. But now that we have policies, we also want to use them. So we can see we have roles here before, and we can simply change that to policies and have to adapt the name, of course, which is cap.travelplanner, because we have the CAP folder with our policy travel planner. The same for Richard, so travel reviewer, and we change roles to policies. And if we have that, we can see, let's have a look at our application again. We have Paula, who is a planner. We can go to our open fields. We can select travel and deduct a discount of, let's say, 10. And you can see it works. So far, so good. so good. And with that, I will hand over to Matthias again, who will show you a few more awesome things we can do with AMS.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've seen now our application now has simple role-based access controls. We have the base policies in place, and now we want to do a bit more advanced things. Sometimes you as application developer, you want to give the end user administrators a bit more fine-grained control about actually the data that should be allowed for certain users to be accessed. And you can do that in attribute-based access control by defining 3 dimensions that you expose to your end user administrators for free filtering. And you usually do that, or AMS allows to do it by means of filter attributes in the model. So again, on CDS level, we have to identify suitable attributes for doing that. Well, not all the attributes would be suitable for doing, because you should have attributes in place that naturally imply a classification of your data. So think about the travels, which are created in agencies, and agencies have a geolocation. So geolocation could be a good attribute for classification, because then you can classify all your travels that are planned maybe in a region. Or another example, the budget, overall budget of a travel, you could take as a 3-dimension attribute for filtering, because then you could allow to segregate those end users who would be allowed only to plan travels until a certain budget, and more experienced planners maybe above that budget. So like done here, so in the CDS model, you add AMS attributes annotation to identify such attributes, usually only a handful or even less, that satisfy these conditions, like here the agency location, the budget. And then also adding this or exposing that in the policy. Yeah, you would enhance the travel planner by these 3 attribute dimensions, like the agency location here. And this is again on the business level. Now, when your application is deployed, user administrators can pick up your base policies with the open attributes and do customizations. They can recombine policies and then are pretty flexible to define filters that fit their needs. In this example, our user administrator wants to have travel planners in Europe only. And that is by just using the travel planner policy and restricting the agency location by some location codes, yeah, that are in the data in the domain. Well, the really important part is that the customization is fully decoupled from the application development. So it's really a flexible approach for access control at runtime. Let's see that also in action.
Yeah, thank you. So let's switch back to our application and to our source code. And due to time constraints, I've prepared an application which uses these AMS attributes. So as we've seen before, we still have our annotation, the restrict annotation. We haven't changed anything. But now additionally, we can define AMS attributes in our CAP application, which are mapped to certain model fields. So in this case, for example, we have we annotate our travel service, travel entity with a few attributes. Let's call it agency ID. Agency ID is mapped to an association and the agency ID on the target side. So we can see that it's mapped and also checked by the compiler. So you have compile time checks that the expression is valid in this case. And our base policy that I've shown before, we can now adapt, we can now change. Instead of simply assigning a role planner, for example, we can say, yeah, assign a role planner, but only with the agency ID and the agency location is not restricted. Not restricted means not restricted by another policy on top, for example. Also, the CDS AMS plugin will automatically have a look at your CDS model and extract the AMS attributes and create a schema for you, so you don't have to. In this case, we can see that budget is correctly mapped to number, for example. Okay, so that's good to know, but how do we test that? First of all, we want to write a custom policy. Let's call it Travel Planner EU. We have a few country codes, for example, only a few in this case. There should be more, of course. And we can say use the CAP travel planner policy and restrict the agency location, and it must be one of those values. Only then assign the planner role. In our resources directory, we can see that I've added a local package. The local package is never deployed to AMS, so all roles inside, all policies inside that are never deployed. Let's have a look. I already showed the test travel policy. It's in the local package, sorry. I haven't changed the mock users, but we can do so simply by changing the cap.travelplanner to local.travelplanner.eu. And by that, the mock user has the role, but only under certain conditions, and we can test it all locally without having to deploy anything to AMS and so on. And to give you a quick demo, I'm still logged in as Paula. Before we have deployed Italy, which works. We can discount a few percent points here. But if I select the US, for example, travel to the US, and I want to deduct a discount here, we can see, well, I can't do that. We're not authorized. And all of that locally by writing a few policies, a few test policies in a single application without any network connection and so on. And with that, I think I can hand over to Matthias again for a few closing words.
Yeah, okay. I think we have seen how you can just pick up AMS support, enhancing your application with. You can run with the same model as you did with XSUA, but you can build on with AMS policies. You can use in mock users. You can test locally. So that's a smooth transition actually, and it gives you more flexibility in the ways how you provide filters for your end user administrators. With that, we are done. Thanks for joining. Don't forget to take part in the survey, and maybe we can pick up one question maybe.
I think we have some time for questions, yes.
I have a rather simple question. So we saw a new file, DCL formats, when we're going to see proper syntax checking and helping us in creating a file.
You write the DCL files, so the policy files actually, and locally there's support for AMS, so it will check the syntax, making sure that everything is fine. For cloud deployments, there's an uploader module that helps you to upload to AMS. So we have not shown you the cloud version of AMS, but you will see the very same, right? Of course, it has an UI then where you can do the recombination, adding the filters, but technically it's the same, yeah? So it's full local support and there's full syntax check on the DCL file.
So the DCL file is compiled locally, and you are able to check it for syntax errors and so on. In this case, there's no IDE support for IntelliJ. I know that the online version, the Cloud Identity Service, has some syntax highlighting and proposals and so on, but not locally in this case. And it's currently mixed up with some other language, which is why you get some strange errors. That's unrelated.
If you want, you can join us the export corner about security, AMS, authentication, whatever you want in 10 minutes.
One question regarding the identity authentication service here. I deployed an application with these features, but I can only assign users. Is that still a limitation? And when will this come to that I can also assign groups to my policies?
So that I know that these requirements are already on the plate and in the roadmap. I'm not sure about the current status, but of course there will be a directory service integration so that you can do this automated provisioning in a more smooth way. Yeah? And it's just assigning to users. Yeah, so I guess this is to come, but I am not in the details for the current status. SCIM APIs are in place already.
I have permission from the guys in the back to give a few more minutes. Are there more questions over here? Where were you?
Hi, thanks for the talk. I have a question regarding UR5, honestly. Will you also bring that to UR5 or to HTML5 apps in general to protect the front ends on the BTP?
Well, this is about backend protection. So authorization happens in the backend. So we have a generic authorization handler in CAP that is capable of targeting several different inputs, like whether you have XSUA for authentication or IAS, now AMS. It's kind of a plugin, so it's also about this integration, but it's all backend. This is the backend side. For the front end, you have different protection mechanisms in place.
Yeah, this would mean so for front end, I would still use XSUA, and in the back end, I would use AMS, right?
Actually not. So so this is all the time. It's actually backend related.
Okay.
So in the UI, you would maybe display users, but you would not protect in your browser. It's on the backend side actually.
Okay.
But of course, you need security measures in your UI itself. So there are several attack vectors that needs to be addressed in the UI side, of course. But that is not about the authentication authorization.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
I saw you on the other side of the room. Oh, you changed your mind? Any other questions in the back?
Will you support a hybrid setup of XSUA and IIS?
Yes, this is in place because for XSUA projects migrating to IIS, it would be required to have, if you have XSUA tenants already, you need to serve at the same time. In CAP, we strictly isolate, but provide at runtime both at the same time. And this is possible because you do this abstraction actually from authentication, authorization. It's all very early in the pipeline of your request. And after that, we have an abstraction with the user info, with our authorization modeling, and it does not care where actually the information comes from. And that is why that is actually working in a hybrid mode.
Maybe I missed this point, but I'm asking myself where the user data are stored. So do you have an extra database for that, or you use any EIS?
So the user data?
Yes.
Yeah, so you have different sources, right? So you have the IDP. So with your users, usually that is where your users come from. They have attributes, group assignments, whatever. This is the one part. And then you have the AMS part where you do the assignment to policies. And of course, it's also possible to have parts in your application as well for dynamic authorization. So that would be even more advanced. You can even have parts in your own applications, have user tables that are assigned to ACLs. And this is all, combination is possible, but you would usually have several sources where user information is stored. But now the difference is that AMS now brings another source of user information. So it's mainly the policy assignment, but IIS will only bring the ID token. So that's just that you are identified correctly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just a reminder that you can find these guys at the Experts Corner in, did you say 10 minutes? Right at 5 o'clock. And at the same time, at 5 o'clock, we have cappuccino in this room. So see you then.